So the most amazing, life-changing question that anyone can ever ask is, who am I? What grace for this question to arise. What grace for life to have decided to question itself through the human form. Without this question, life is suffering. To live a life identified with the character. I suspect that most humans, life gets worse and worse and worse. In fact, I'm pretty positive, unless there's some form of awakening or shift, or they were born without identification. And the reason that I suspect, although I say suspect out of humility, but I'm pretty certain that it's happening, even though they pretend it's not happening because they're ashamed that they've messed up their life, is because as soon as identification with a character happens, with a body, mind, as soon as there's a losing of who you truly are and believing that you are a person in time, there is a exacerbation of thinking, and that will increase and increase and increase as the body ages, and it won't get better, it will get worse. It'll get more and more intense because the neural pathways will grow in particular ways, which will trigger the nervous system, and the nervous system will get more rattled. The hormonal system will become more out of balance, and more seeking will emerge. And life, the way that our life is set up in Western societies, is life doesn't get easier as it goes on, it gets harder. Because for most people that are in the middle class bracket and poorer, you don't get a respite from paying your bills. But as you get older, you get less energy, and then you have more jobs, because as your children begin to age and need a lot of work, care, and then you're looking after the home, looking after your job, and then your parents begin to get ill, so then you also begin to look after them as well. So your life becomes more and more harder as you get into your 40s and 50s. Maybe the external life gets simpler as you get into your 60s. But for the majority of people, being expected to work full-time, raise kids, and look after elderly parents, it becomes crippling. That combined with the thoughts getting more and more intense, because if you don't deal with it, they're going to disrupt your nervous system, and then your nervous system is going to create more thinking. And it's like anything, the more that you do something, the more etched in the habits get. And people generally don't complain about this. They can take either two routes. They oscillate maybe between two routes of the shame and the pride. So if you feel ashamed that you've messed up your life in some way, which you haven't, but that's the belief, then you'll keep quiet about it, or you'll blame other people, say, or put the blame on the government, you'll become a conspiracy person, or all types of different things. Or you might go the other way and really blame yourself, become ill, burn out, all these types of things. So without the questioning of who am I, most people in this life are suffering more than we acknowledge, and they're dealing with it mostly through drugs, i.e. alcohol and coffee and sugar. And then some people also other drugs. Yeah. Government, drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, or what we call illegal drugs. So the fact that then you have the question arise in your life, who am I, is grace. Most of the human planet will never think this. It is such grace to say and think, who am I? Because who am I question is not actually about seeking as such. It can become seeking and go in and out of seeking, but generally its initial questioning isn't about seeking. It's an undoing that begins to happen that's grace. The person doesn't want this. The person wants to be something. That's all it's interested in. It wants to be something, get resources, and live the best life, better than all its the people around it, all its contemporaries. It wants to have the best life, so I can be number one, and then I can feel that I'm a fantastic person. But who am I isn't self-healing, it isn't improvement, it isn't about you being spiritual. It's a really existential question, which most people avoid or aren't interested in. It's not, essentially, it's not something that's a seeking. The mind might turn it into a seeking, like, oh, this who am I is going to get me enlightened. But the initial popping or bubbling of it, the initial appearance of it, is a stopping from all the seeking, from all the being, from all the obtaining, from all the getting and grasping and fighting and trying. And then it's like, but who am I? Who am I? Most people will just live in this idea of themselves their whole life, that they are a name, that they are a body, that they live in a society, that they're from planet Earth, that clouds go round in the sky, that have a car, that are grandparents or parents or children. They're a doctor, they're a therapist, they're a road cleaner, they're good, they're bad. They'll just live in that identity. But who am I is like far out. Fuck. Who am I? This is really freaking weird, being alive. Why am I my name, my form, my job, all these things that get put on me? I wasn't that when I was one. I wasn't that before I could think. So who am I? And it's kind of like the ultimate annihilation. Because who are you right now, sitting here? Most people believe they are their thoughts. And their thoughts say, I'm John, and I'm sitting in this chair, and I have a pretty yellow and orange dress on, and I like exquisite holidays, and I like to fly first class, and I like big trees, and I'm from United Kingdom, and I think that Brexit was a great thing. Ooh, woo! What is it, the slogan of Brexit? Make Britain great again. And then they're just off in this like little choo-choo train, like, boom, this is who I am. But it's like the train suddenly stops, and then it's like, hang on, who am I? Who will I be when I die? Who was I before I was born? And who am I in deep sleep? And who am I when I forget thinking about myself? Who am I if I get a bump on my head and I forget all my thoughts? And where, boom, 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 to take it back to the title, do the thoughts come from? I mean, that's quite cool. Nothing can just do that. It can circle around. Like, I had no idea it would circle around on that, and it did. Where do thoughts come from? So if you're sitting here listening to this talk, questioning who you are, that's really freaking amazing. What grace. What amazing community. Now, these people in this Telegram group are contemplating who they are. They're not believing that they're a doctor, that they're a road cleaner, that they're a bus driver, they're a Brexit supporter. They're questioning who they are. And to me, this is the ultimate freedom. This isn't freedom in the character world. This isn't making the character better. This is going back to something beyond and before the character. This isn't self-help, even though I'm a big advocate of that. And I believe that often waking up to who you truly are and self-help are together, because often the person needs to settle itself down. It's seeking patterns, it's unconscious thinking, it's grasping, it's ideas, it's belief systems, it's patterns, it's behaviors. So it needs to settle all of that down to become less cluttered, for the truth to emerge. That's not always the case. There's always exceptions. Like you can look at Eckhart Tolle, who, was in severe depression. And I don't think he was into spirituality. I don't know though. And then suddenly had this immense awakening. So it's not always the case. Like there's no one shoe fits all. But the majority of people, this happens simultaneously. And sometimes the settling down happens after the awakening, the character. Sometimes there can be a semi-awakening and a settle down. Like awakenings different also for everybody. There can be partial awakenings, there can be awakenings of different elements, there can be awakening of Kundalini energy. But actual non-duality isn't about the cleaning up of the personality and cleaning up of the character. It's who are you prior to the character? Who are you prior to the character? Who are you before you were born and after you die? But also, who are you before you were here? You have an image arising in your mind, you have thoughts arising in your mind, saying that you were someone that walked up the steps, came into your office and sat and decided to watch this. But actually, that's not your reality right now. Right now, previous moment is like before being born. Except before being born, you might not have any memories arising about what happened. Whereas in the last moment, you have a seemingly consecutive story that's arising. So in the end, this comes down to nothing. Nothing. Not nothing like you imagine it. Nothing as in not a thing found in this world. No thing. The discovery is that you are no thing in this world, and yet that no thingness makes up everything. Everything originates from that no thing. You're no more this body than you are the trees outside, the wind, the clouds, the computer. No thing. No thing. And so in the end, everything, including thoughts, are coming from this no thing. But the thoughts come with identification in them, a belief, an energy which is saying, I am a thought. But it's not saying I am a thought, it's saying I am Bob. I like potatoes. I go to the pub every Friday night. And that is the lie, that is the waking up. the remembering of what you are prior to the person. And no person wants this. The person doesn't want to be nothing. Don't mistake yourself. You know, most of the time people are imagining enlightenment as bliss, as pleasure, as all good things. And it does have good effects on the body, but that's effects. The discovery is that you have never been alive. The thoughts are arising from nowhere. The character is arising from nowhere. No thing. Which you could call mystery, you could call potentiality, you could call God. But this isn't about a continuation of your existence. And on the human level, that's all it wants to do, is have pleasure and continue its existence. Some might want to end their existence if they're in immense pain. But generally, the body wants to continue its existence. But it never existed. You've never been alive. It's a lie, it's an illusion. What you've been is this no-thingness, which is conscious of everything that's happening. And what happens in awakening is there is a movement back to the consciousness and the beingness, the I amness. And then you're on the precipice between the nothing and the everything. There's a movement back to the empty looking and that sense of being. And then you are empty and full simultaneously. And the consciousness is everything. Everything is consciousness. But the consciousness is nothing and doesn't actually exist. Oh man, I can't even get there with words. But it doesn't matter. There just has to be an investigation of who you are, a commitment to this, a moving back to the empty looking or the sense of I am, putting your personal awareness in that. And then at some point, it will be seen that you were never doing that and it wasn't your effort, and that who you actually are is this empty looking and this sense of beingness. And its backside is empty, is nothing, and its front side is everything, which is love. Yeah, words really fail it to say. I mean, that's the best I can do. And all teachers describe this slightly differently. Some teachers have had different realizations and there are different points in their awakening. But there's no fixed way of teaching this because it's actually pre-verbal, because words are something that's appearing. So therefore, if they're appearing, they're not actually the empty looking or the sense of I am. They're being watched by the consciousness. So there's something prior to the words. So the words can't actually describe what are prior to them. What love? It's absolute love. It's going home. It's the end of suffering. It's coming back to deep rest. And it will fix the character to an extent and change the character, but that's not the point. The character could still be neurotic or angry or have negative emotions or negative thoughts. That improves with working on the character. But that's not the point. The point is moving back to the stillness of what you are. And then even the thoughts are still. Everything is still. The anger, frustration, even jealousy. Well, any feeling really, except hatred. That seems to be one that definitely goes. Roger Castillo, one of my teachers would say, that's because of doership. Like what goes is doership. So the sense that it's anybody's fault, that anybody is really having autonomy. There's a deep knowing of that. It doesn't mean that you don't say, you just ran over my foot. That was really stupid. It's not about not reprimanding or getting other people to take responsibilities. It's part of this. It's this deep, deep knowing that everything is one and that no one is acting independently, so therefore you can't hate. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, then you can either ask in Telegram or you can put your hand up in Zoom.